Okay, the time is now 5:30, which is the appointed hour to start this. Let's stand, please, and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to welcome everybody to the community development meeting. I think Todd will be joining us online. At least that's the last plan that I heard. But let's get started with our roll call, please.
Roach. Campbell.
Yes.
Vorse.
Here.
Parchman.
Here.
Stoffel.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is our approval of minutes from April 14th. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Nay, same sign. Okay, thank you. Minutes are approved. Okay, this is a community development committee meeting this evening. Our purpose is to exchange information as much as possible and certainly get information from those folks who live in O'Fallon. We will have at least 2 sessions to allow comments. We have a fairly lengthy agenda this evening. So we will go through that as quickly as we can while still covering all of the details. The first item is a resolution approving an alternative parking plan for HSHS St. Elizabeth Medical Campus. Want to talk to that issue?
And Mr. Chair, Mr. Roach has joined the meeting online.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. 2.1 is a resolution approving an alternative parking plan for HSHS St. Elizabeth Medical Campus. Per City Code Section 158.138, it does authorize City Council the ability to approve an alternative parking plan if the owner can provide information to justify the modification. There are 2 instances that the applicant can apply for an alternative parking plan. They can provide data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers showing the peak parking demand, or they can ask for a 20% overall reduction from the required parking of per City Code. Looking at the background of HSHS St. Elizabeth Medical Campus, this was originally approved by City Council through a planned use approval on October 20th, 2014 by Ordinance 3842. This ordinance did give approval for the planned use for the entire medical campus, and it also authorized a variance for a 25.6% overall parking requirement reduction with conditions. The condition being that if a parking problem does exist, the additional parking design will be constructed at the city's request in order to eliminate any parking problem that would exist. Moving forward to where we are today, civil plans have been submitted for a 70,000 square foot acute surgery treatment center and medical office building. This was a part of the original planned use approval, so it does not require to come back to City Council for approval. However, they are asking for an alternative parking plan that will differ from the original 25.6% overall requirement. They will be submitting additional plans for additions and renovations, including an expanded dietary department, a 15,500 square foot emergency department addition, and renovation of the dietary department on the 5th floor to include 32 additional inpatient hospital rooms to meet increased patient demand. And so as those plans come forward, city staff will review them and work with HSHS to ultimately issue building permits for those renovations and additions. So taking a look at the alternative parking plan, HSHS has provided data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE, providing peak parking demands. This includes the hospital. ITE suggests that the peak parking demand for a hospital is 0.74 parking spaces per employee between the hours of 11 o'clock a.m. and 2 o'clock p.m., and this is all Monday through Friday. Medical offices have a peak parking demand of 3.58 spaces per 1,000 square feet, at 10 o'clock a.m. Monday through Friday, and operating rooms have a peak parking demand of 8.50 spaces per operating room between 10 o'clock a.m. and 11 o'clock a.m. So taking a look at what this means, first I'll show you the required parking per city code, and then the requested alternative parking plan by HSHS. First, looking at the required parking per city code on the left-hand side of the table, hospitals are required to have 2 parking spaces per bed. For 176 beds, the hospital would be required to have 352 spaces. They're also required to have 1 parking space per employee for a total of 728 spaces for each employee. For the existing and proposed medical office building, city code states that there is 4.5 parking spaces required per 1,000 gross floor area. The existing medical office building is 135,000 square feet, so they are required to have 608 per city code. And for the proposed medical office building at 51,670 square feet, they would be required to have 233 spaces per city code. Additionally, the acute surgery treatment center is going to be 18,330 square feet. At a requirement of 4.5 parking spaces per 1,000 gross floor area, this would be 82 parking spaces. So per city code, HSHS Medical overall campus would be required to have 2,003 overall parking spaces. Taking a look at the requested alternative parking plan on the right-hand side of the table, they are meeting code, and they will be providing 352 parking spaces for the 176 beds. And that using the ITE peak parking demand, they are asking for a variance of 0.74 parking spaces per employees. The demand would be 539 spaces overall, and they are providing 555 parking spaces. For the existing medical building, as it was approved back in 2014, HSHS has provided 453 parking spaces, and using the ITE data at 3.58 parking spaces for the proposed 51,670 square foot building, they would be required to have 185 spaces, which they are providing. Then looking at the acute surgery treatment center, which ITE states it has a peak parking demand of 8.5 parking spaces. They are proposing 51 spaces, which they have included. So using the proposed alternative parking plan that does meet code utilizing the ITE data, the demand would be 1,580 parking spaces, and on their site plan, they have included 1,596. So they are over the ITE requirement.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from committee?
No,
He's not done yet.
I'm almost done.
still-
One more
still
slide.
have more to
You are
go.
totally
Okay,
fine.
thank
So,
you.
just to reiterate, the ordinance 3842 does authorize a variance for 25.6% overall parking reduction. The proposed alternative parking plan provides 1,596 spaces of the required 2,003. This is approximately a 20% reduction, and staff does recommend approval of the alternative parking plan as they do meet the ITE requirement per city code.
Okay, okay, pretty well explained. Any questions from the committee? Questions from council? Yes, Ross?
Well, what did we base our ordinance on if it's not the ITE? Where did we come up with our numbers?
So I'm assuming that back in whenever the code was adopted, this would be through the International Code Council. And this does, I will say that when we do look at our code next year and do a comprehensive update, this is something that we will look at because the parking requirements that were adopted 6 to 10 years ago have certainly changed over the last few years.
All right, and one more question. Has St. E's ever had an issue with, because they've had other variances, if memory serves me correctly, have they ever had an issue where there wasn't enough or?
So to answer kind of the previous question and the current one, so there was an ordinance allowing a variance of 25.6% reduction in parking. Part of that with conditions was they still have a design ghost parking, as we call it. So the city periodically would look and we'd work with the hospital. And in the event that their parking demands were not adequate, we could initiate that ghost parking, which would then eventually remove that 25% 25.6% reduction in staff. So the reason we have never initiated that ghost parking shows that there was no issues with their parking on their campus. When we met with the hospital, these are large-scale developments similar with Park Place, and so they have users that go back and forth and share parking spaces. If you're getting treatment in one building, you're not going to get back in your car and travel across the street, or vice versa. And so that's how we look at these ITs and are really able to kind of drive into the data of peak period hours. Additionally, has been shared with the developer, and Ms. Dana Link, who is the engineer on record for the hospital, is here if more questions are asked. But medicine has changed as well, and treatment, and it's a bit beyond Greg and I's professional experience, but specifically nursing. While the hospital was first platted out, there was one nurse per one bed or one patient. Now they have different ways where one nurse can treat multiple patients. And so by getting into the IT and these new updated data metrics, we're able to better and more finite produce appropriate numbers for parking.
Any other questions or comments from council? Questions or comments from public? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Campbell,
Yes.
Force.
Yes.
Parchman.
Yes.
Stoffel.
Yes.
Roach.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next agenda item, number 2.2, is an ordinance amending Ordinance 2073 to add territory to St. Clair County Mid-America Enterprise Zone.
Thank you. This is a ordinance to add additional boundaries in the city of Lebanon. Enterprise zones, just to provide additional background, are designed to stimulate economic growth and revitalization through state incentives and exemptions. Enterprise participants can be granted exemptions of the state, city, and county sales tax for building materials incorporated permanently into real estate located within the zone. These incentives are managed by St. Clair County and the Illinois Department of Revenue. City Council originally approved the Mid-America Enterprise Zone through Ordinance 2073 on December 6, 1999, which establishes the zone with areas within the county: Lebanon, Muscuda, O'Fallon, and Shiloh. Final approval for the Mid-America Enterprise Zone is through the Southwestern Illinois Development Authority and the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Taking a look at the current boundary and the proposed boundary for the enterprise zone, the current boundary is outlined in red, which touches parts of the county, city of Lebanon, Muscuda, Shiloh, and the city of O'Fallon. On the northern part of the photo, depicted in blue, are the areas that are being requested to be a part of the Mid-America Enterprise Zone, which are strictly a part. All boundaries for the proposal are located within the city of Lebanon. There was a public hearing as required by state law held on November 14th, 2024 at Lebanon City Hall with a request to add territory to the enterprise zone by modifying the boundary to include potential development sites in Lebanon. I did reach out to the county. There were no other parties that attended the meeting besides the city of Lebanon, and to date there have been no objections to add these boundaries to the existing enterprise zone. In order to make the full amendment, an ordinance reflecting the boundary change must be executed by each municipality in the county. This is being done through Moran Development in St. Clair County. All of these items have been reviewed by the city attorney, and staff recommends approval of the ordinance modifying the enterprise zone boundary.
Okay. Any questions from the committee?
Can you just remind me when this expires? Is it 2030?
That is correct, 2030. And so these enterprise zones all have to be reinstituted by state legislature. And I know they're gearing up for the first round of the enterprise zones that expire in 2027. But yes, 2030.
So then realistically, we're looking at a couple years before that, maybe having to revisit this to expand it?
Yes, so it would have to be passed again as an enterprise zone.
Okay.
By law, I believe there can only be 47 enterprise zones in the state of Illinois.
Okay. Other questions from committee? Questions from council? Yes, Ross?
Look, can you go back to the map? There's more than, I think, there's some blue areas up there that are bodies of water, are there not? There's two different blues, unless my,
Correct. So there is this blue right here, which is located by bodies of water, and then the blue in this area. I don't,
so it's not all the blue, it's just those few that are outlined in black.
yes, sir.
All right.
Yep.
And the property tax abatement that we passed in 2019, I know that this property is just in Lebanon. Does that affect O'Fallon in any way, shape, or form? I know there's some areas like Shiloh that have something to do with.
Yes, so adding the property tax abatement portion on enterprise zones took a enactment clause similar to what we're seeing here today for expansion. To date, the only municipality that has actually passed an ordinance allowing that property tax abatement program as part of the enterprise zone is the city of O'Fallon. And so, to my knowledge, Lebanon doesn't have that kind of tool in their arsenal for this enterprise zone to be expanded into Lebanon on those areas.
So this isn't going to affect us at all as far as any kind of property tax?
No, I don't believe so. The only thing it affects is maximum of an enterprise zone can be 30 square miles, which this is far below that threshold. And so the only times there are kind of conflicts on enterprise zones statewide is when they're really close to that threshold and one city's like, well, we don't want to give you all of it because we want some, but that's not the case here.
Okay.
I have another question.
Yes.
The staff doesn't have any issue. It looks like the parts that are being added in Lebanon, I mean, they're already primarily developed areas in Lebanon, whereas all of the red stuff is undeveloped land, so there's not an issue with that. You don't have,
Not from a competitive standpoint. Enterprise zones are really, it's sales tax abatement through construction materials purchased in the state of Illinois for construction in the state of Illinois. So we haven't had those conversations about what exactly are you using this for. But no, we don't have any concerns that
Okay.
it would harm us or damage us.
Okay. Questions from the public or comments? Okay. Hearing none. We have a motion.
so moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Force. Yes. Parchman.
Yes.
Stoffel.
Yes,
Roach.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is a resolution approving and accepting the minor subdivision of Prairie Lawn lots, 124 through 129 on 0.45 acres on lots 1 and 2 identified in minor subdivision plat.
Thank you, Chair. Per section 154.077 of the City Code of Ordinances, minor subdivisions may be exempted from the procedures and the requirements for preliminary plats, and the subdivider may proceed to the filing of the final plat for review. So this is a resolution for this minor subdivision. The address is generally 117 South Lawn Avenue. It is currently one piece of property divided into 6 lots as shown. The subdivider is requesting to divide it into 2 for 2 separate lots, each approximately 9,768 square feet and 9,767 square feet. This has been reviewed by staff. The applicant's requesting 2 lots, approximately 0.5 acres. Single-family homes will be built on each lot, and the properties are zoned SR3. Minor subdivision does meet the bulk regulations of SR3 zoning, which requires a minimum of 6,000 square feet, and staff does recommend approval of the minor subdivision.
Okay. Any questions from committee? Questions from council? Yes.
Do you know yet, the 2 single-family homes, is it gonna be one cut in the lot, or is it gonna be separate, like, cuts, like their driveways?
We do have the petitioner here, and his engineer, Marcia from TWM. Marcia, if you could help answer this question, I believe it is going to be 2 separate driveways.
That is correct.
thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay, any comments or questions from public? Hearing none, we have a motion?
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
And we have a second. Okay, roll call, please.
Parchman,
Yes.
Stoffel,
Yes.
Roach,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vorse.
Yes.
Okay. The next item is item 2.4, a resolution approving and accepting the minor subdivision of 1355 Scott Troy Road, known as Wish Upon a Star, on 4.92 acres.
Thank you. Once again, this property is exempt from the requirements of preliminary plats and can move strictly to forwarding for the filing plat, for the final plat for review. This property is located within the 1.5 miles outside of the municipal border, but per our ordinances, they do fall within our planning jurisdiction, are subject to the ordinance of minor subdivision. Taking a look at the property of 1355 Scott Troy Road, this is in relation to where the municipal border is. The property is starred and is located along Scott Troy Road. Taking a look at how the petitioner is proposing to subdivide the lots, it's currently a 5-acre lot. They're looking to make one lot, as outlined in yellow, 3 acres. They are providing 50 feet of right-of-way for ingress egress off of Scott Troy Road, and they are also providing an easement to Lot 2, which is outlined in green. They are proposing to build 2 homes, a home on each lot. Again, the minor subdivision is not located within city limits, but per the Land Subdivision Control Ordinance, unincorporated area within 1.5 miles of the corporate limits are subject to general provisions of the ordinance. The property does not currently have and will not need city utilities, and based on the minor subdivision plat, staff does recommend approval of the subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from committee? Questions or comments from council? Yes, Ross.
Should sometime in the future that they want city utilities, that comes back before city council, correct?
Yes, sir, yes. For this minor subdivision, they were required to sign a pre-annexation agreement that would require that.
Okay, good. Okay. Any questions or comments from public? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Stoffel,
Yes.
Roach,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vorse,
Yes.
Parchman.
Yes.
Take the next item, please.
Thank you. 2.5 is an ordinance designating as a local historic landmark 907 Southview, parcel number 04-32.0-103-02 in O'Fallon, Illinois, pursuant to the requirements of Chapter 151 of the O'Fallon Code of Ordinances. This is the property located at 907 Southview. The home was built in 1967 and has mid-century modern aesthetics with a blend of Asian design principles. The home was originally built by O'Fallon businessman Neil Gavin. 907 Southview has 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and is a split-level home and was built by local home builder Rich Smiley. The most notable features include the hybrid design of the roof with prow gables and a hip roof. Michael and Susan Cook are the applicants, and they have applied for designation of a historical landmark. This was put forth before the Historic Preservation Commission on April 1st, 2025 as part of a public hearing, and they did recommend approval. Per city code, in recommending and approving the designation of the proposed landmark site, the commission and the city council shall utilize the following criteria: its embodiment of elements of design, detailing, materials, or craftsmanship that renders it architecturally significant or innovative, and representation of a sense of time and place unique with the city. The Historic Preservation Commission did vote 5-0 to approve and recommend approval as part of a historic landmark designation. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from committee? Questions or comments from council?
I was just trying to understand this process. If there was some sort of benefit for them to have this particular designation or for the city or anything like that?
So it's more, I believe, to preserve the character of the home. If for any reason, if it were to move on to a future property owner, or if it were damaged during a natural disaster, they would be required to go back forth before the Historic Preservation Commission to seek approval to make any alterations or renovations to the property.
Okay. Okay. Questions or comments from council? Hearing none. Questions or comments from public? So hearing none. Okay. We have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Roach,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vorse,
No.
Parchman,
Yes.
Stoffel.
Yes.
Okay. Next item is 2.6. Go ahead and take that, please, Greg.
Thank you. 2.6 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 623, the zoning development known as Bethel Grove subdivision, consisting of 49.10 acres on parcel number 04-07.0-300-015 and 04-07.0-300-010. This is a planned use submittal from applicant Rich Goraz. This is for property of 49.10 acres currently located in unincorporated St. Clair County. The properties are currently zoned rural residential 3, and Mr. Goraz has submitted a planned use application for a subdivision to be called Bethel Grove subdivision with 53 lots. The lot sizes will vary from 18,341 square feet to a maximum of 80,000 square feet. The properties are currently located south of Bethel Road and west of Country Lane. They are 49.10 acres and they are contiguous with the city of O'Fallon border. The proposed zoning for this subdivision is single-family residential 1 with a planned use, so planned single-family residential dwelling district for lots 1 through 53. The proposal does meet the zoning district area and bulk regulations. The residential dwellings are proposed to be 2,000 to 2,400 square feet, and it does meet the net density at 1.08 dwelling units per acre. The maximum dwelling units per acre for this zoning designation would be 4 dwelling units per acre. Access would be provided by 2 roads. There would be new road construction on the western side of the property. There will be exclusive driveways to each single-family home, and sidewalks will be installed throughout the subdivision. Landscaping will be required to meet all of the requirements per city code. 155.074 states that the landscaping plan should be approved with final construction plans. There is a variance request after consulting with Public Works, the Public Works Department, and the developer to move the street trees to the front lawns and located on private property. This is to prevent any destruction or any damage as they grow to utilities and to the sidewalks and to the roads. Looking at drainage, and I will get into a more detailed site plan, stormwater runoff will be directed to the 2 existing wet ponds located on the northern and eastern sides of the property. Stormwater detention area is also located on the southern side of the property. Building and elevations, as stated, there is a minimum of 2,000 square foot for a ranch model, and the homes will go up to 2,400 square feet for a 1.5 story or a 2-story home, and the homes will have an elevation with similar aesthetics of Bethel Ridge Farm subdivision homes. Looking at the site plan, ingress and egress will be provided through Country Lane and also on the east side of the subdivision and through a new road which will be constructed on the western side of the subdivision, both off of Bethel Road. Drainage will be located on Outlot B, an existing wet pond, Outlot D, which is also an existing wet pond, and there will be a newly constructed detention area on Outlot C in the southern part of the subdivision. The other requested variance from the applicant is for lot 49 and 50. There's currently a structure located on Lot 50, which will be utilized by Bethel Grove LLC or State Construction for their offices, and Lot 49 will be utilized as a display home. When construction is completed, the display home on Lot 49 will be sold in conjunction with Lot 50, and they are asking for the structure on Lot 50 to remain as is. Taking a look at conformity with the 2040 master plan and the future land use map. The future land use map does designate these properties as low-density residential, which have a maximum dwelling unit of 4.4 units per acre. This subdivision does have a maximum dwelling unit of 1.08 units per acre. The proposed subdivision standards do reflect good architectural design qualities. This development infills an underdeveloped property in O'Fallon with access to infrastructure and public services, and the development also provides additional housing options for current and future O'Fallon residents. Looking at conformity with zoning regulations and zoning ordinances, the proposed use meets all bulk regulations for the SR1 zoning classification, and the proposed use will not have a significant impact on traffic, nor will it negatively affect adjacent properties. Taking a look at this ordinance, the next ordinance, and the next resolution, staff ultimately will recommend approval of the plan use development through this proposed ordinance, an annexation of 49.1 acres on parcel number 0407.0300.015 and 0407.0300.010, and also a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a pre-annexation agreement with Bethel Grove LLC. Looking at the variances and staff recommendations for approval of the project, the development must comply with the area and bulk regulations of the SR1 zoning district. Subdivision entry signs cannot be located on any public right-of-way or within the sight distance triangle of intersecting streets. The sign and structure shall be located within an outlot or a sign easement. A variance to remove the required street trees out of the 7-foot landscape buffer between the roadway and sidewalk and into private front lawns, and a variance allowing for the existing structure on Lot 50 to remain as is, which shall be utilized as an office for Bethel Grove LLC until development is complete. Lot 49 will be utilized as a display home until it is sold, with Lot 50 at which the existing structure will be permitted to remain. We do have Rich Gore as the applicant who is in attendance tonight, should you have any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee?
Yeah, what is the building on Lot 50 currently used for? Or what does it look like? Do you have a photo of it?
I do not have a photo of it.
I didn't hear the question.
Do you, a photo or what's the use of the building right now on Lot 50?
It's a recently built pole barn, bright red, kind of looks like the old barn style, that we intend to use for storage and a little bit of office space while we're building out there. But it's really nice. We feel like we can landscape it up and sell it with the model home when we are complete.
Okay. What about the, it's all city services, right? For septic, I mean, for sewer and
Correct,
water?
yes.
Because it's,
Yes, it
on
is.
Lot 51, it says something about septic and sanitary clean out and all that. Is that on septic right now?
That is tied into the sewer right now. There used to be a house on the property that had sewer, and so when that house was removed, I believe we used that sewer to tie into.
Okay.
But yes, to answer your question, this would be, city services would be provided, utilities would be provided by the city.
Can you speak to can you go back? Can you speak to the road that the people that currently live off of that country lane, how they're going to access their homes, the existing folks that are kind of off this map? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, so the drive located on the southern portion of Country Lane, that has been indicated, that is the darker areas. Those drives will be placed in outlots, and they will remain the same so the existing residents can still have access to their homes.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I couldn't quite tell the way the map was. It kind of looked like it cut off their access to their homes. So thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
One of the questions that occurs to me is where the drainage from this development is going to go.
So this development, as it currently sits and in future plans, drains eventually into Ogles Creek.
So I had a quick question. As we've talked about, wanting to expand and have the ability to have access to put, bike trails or walking paths in, is there any consideration for that in this design?
Yes, so along Bethel, there is additional right-of-way being deeded by the property owner for a future bike expansion, hopefully in the near future, connecting the bike trail where the overpass is directly to the west to the area further east towards Bethel Ridge.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Questions from council? Yes.
My initial thoughts on the variance is yes, 2 thumbs up. Is this something that we see continuing in the future? Because I know that in several of the subdivisions in our ward, the street trees create sidewalk issues, traffic issues. So is that something that we consider in general in the city, moving those trees onto the private property instead of so close?
So this has became a common variance, mostly requested by staff, due to the difficulty is maintaining these street trees. While we understand they are beautiful and they add a nice aesthetic to them, they do become a pain after a couple decades with sidewalks specifically. And so I imagine in our zoning update, that will probably be one of the revisions that staff asks of the council.
Any other questions from council? Okay, comments from public or?
We go to the map that has the plat on there. I'm Dave Pfeiffer, 801 Deer Creek Road, Ward 2. We've got 2 existing detention basins, drainage areas. Okay, they handle the existing runoff right now, the existing runoff. So we're the increased detention basin and increased water management for the increased runoff from the houses, yards, and the buildings now. This is existing. So that's handling the runoff now. So we're going to increase all this, but we're not going to increase the detention basins on here. I'm asking. Is there a plan for some more drainage?
What is your question?
Is there going to be some more drainage to ensure that we don't increase the runoff? And we're using existing farm ponds now.
So I can speak to that. The existing ponds will be analyzed, and recommendations will be made to modify the outlet structure to reduce the flow to mitigate any additional runoff that would occur from the site.
Maybe that should happen now.
It will happen.
Well, maybe it should happen before this is approved.
It will be required of the construction plans prior to city issuing any permits for construction. That'll be done at staff level.
Well, so it won't come back for approval then?
It'll be required by staff.
Well, we've seen that before. We've got issues that.
Well,
that
let's
happened before.
hold off here. This committee does not take a final vote. We simply make a recommendation to
Understand.
council.
And you asked for my comments, and those are my comments.
So
That
it'll
I'll-
meet council
Okay.
twice for first and second readings.
Yeah, so it doesn't get approved that here, though. Okay. But I don't see any increased detentions for increased runoff here.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ross?
Yeah, it is outlot C, is that a new one?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
There were 3 arrows up there.
Okay, it was mentioned. So that third one accounts for the increased runoff for the,
Can you please step back up to the mic if you have a question?
that third detention basin, eliminating the first 2, that third detention basin accounts for the increased runoff for the entire subdivision. That's my question.
Along with the modifications that Jeff was talking
Okay, but we're still using the ponds for the existing runoff.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a problem.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from public? Okay, thank you. All righty. In the interest of time here, do we want to include the next two and vote on all three as a group? If they're all related? Or just cover the next two? And, well, I guess first we need a motion.
If that is what you wish to do.
To take the next two items in a group with this one and have a single vote.
Yeah, they're all in corresponding order, so you can take the vote for the first plan use ordinance, then the annexation, and then the resolution. We'll go in order.
Okay, you want to do that? Okay.
If you wish, you could just vote once on all three of them. Committees are,
So I would make a
Committees
motion
are
that we do
advisory.
an omnibus for the three items all related together.
Can you turn that up? I can't hear.
He made a motion to group all three of them together in an omnibus.
Are you talking 2.6?
ma'am, can you please stand up to the microphone if you have a
Yes.
question?
2.6, 2.7, and 2.8.
So you're talking about putting 2.6, 2.7, 2.8 all in one thing?
Right.
There's an omnibus vote, yes,
Are they all located in the same place?
exactly.
Yep.
To the committee, you do not need to approve an omnibus. This is an advisory committee. You may vote on all three of them if you so wish and indicate to Greg that's what your votes will be.
Okay,
It's fine.
do we need a motion to that effect, or just handle it? Okay, let's just go ahead and handle those individual votes then.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, so this is a vote for 2.6 ordinance for the planned use development for Bethel Grove subdivision.
okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Campbell,
Yes.
Force,
Yes.
Parchman.
Yes.
Stoffel,
Yes.
Roach.
Yes.
Okay. Next item?
This is a vote for ordinance 2.7, an annexation of 49.1 acres.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Force,
Yes.
Parchman,
Yes.
Stoffel,
Yes.
Roach,
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes. Okay, next item?
This is a vote for 2.8, a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a pre-annexation agreement for Bethel Grove subdivision.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Parchman,
Yes.
Stoffel,
Yes.
Roach,
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Vorse.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Carries. Okay. Item 2.9 is an ordinance amending ordinance 623 zoning districts, the city of O'Fallon, Illinois, for the development known as Q Storage located at 1690 New Car Drive.
Thank you. This is also a planned use submittal for the property located at 1690 New Car Drive. The property is 2.44 acres. It is the property located northeast in the former Offenburg Auto Mall. The current zoning for the location is B1P, planned use, community business district. The applicant is Kenny Buelterman of ZK O'Fallon LLC, who is unfortunately out of town and could not be here tonight. The proposed use is mini warehousing / self-storage, which does require planned use approval by city council. The prior use for this property was automotive sales and repair.
Okay.
Looking at the current zoning and adjacent zoning, as you see, most properties within that are adjacent are zoned B1P, B1, and B2 Community Business District. Property located north is B2. I-64 and Dodge Moving and Storage are located north of this property. East, B1 Planned Use Community Business. There's a detention basin and Walmart Supercenter. Located to the south, zoning classification B1P Planned Use Community Business is a vacant parking lot and Academy Sports. And the property to the west in the former Offenburg Auto Mall is currently vacant in Zone B1. Looking at the future land use map, this property is classified as regional commercial. The property located north is heavy commercial, and then there is institutional zoning districts where the sewer treatment plant is located. Regional commercial by the future land use map is regional retail, restaurants, hotel, conference centers, entertainment, recreational facilities, offices, and apartments as the appropriate use. Typically, mini warehouse self-storage would not be considered an appropriate use for this type of zoning or for the future land use map. However, it does conform to the 2040 master plan, as filling the Offenburg Auto Mall sites are a goal that the city is trying to accomplish. The type of traffic generators are heavy traffic and lighting generators, which are appropriate for regional commercial. So once again, this is typically not appropriate use for a B1 zoning classification, but since there are remaining sites that are still vacant within Offenburg Auto Mall, staff does believe it's an appropriate use as it aligns with the 2040 master plan. Once again, this is a planned use, 2.44 acres for mini warehouse self-storage. Located in the center of the site plan is an existing building that is 15,500 square feet. The petitioner is going to do major renovations to that building to create climate-controlled self-storage units. This would be a total self-storage units accumulating of 350 units. On the east and the western sides of the existing building, he's looking to add an addition of 10,575 square feet on the west and 25,000 square feet on the east. There will be a total of 350 units and 150 square feet of office space. Looking at the zoning, it is currently zoned B1P, Planned Community Business District. The proposed use does meet zone district area and bulk regulations, and building setbacks are met, as well as the maximum lot coverage, which is 50%. Access and parking. Access to the site will be provided from New Car Drive as it exists today. The petitioner is proposing an alternative parking plan, which will be covered. There's an existing sidewalk along New Car Drive, which will remain unchanged, and fire apparatus access has been reviewed by the fire department, and they do approve the plan as it exists today. Landscaping would be required in the buffer along New Car Drive, as other sites have been required in the former Offenburg Auto Mall, and landscaping does meet the intent of the city's requirements for landscaping within the parking lot. Drainage, there is water service from the city of O'Fallon and a 6-inch main along Auto Court. Sanitary sewer will be provided from Caseyville Township, and there will be on-site detention facilities. The dumpster closure is not currently depicted on the site plan, but we are currently doing staff review, and they are being requested to be included on the next revision. Per city code, they will be allowed to have one wall sign for each wall facing on or off-site parking. Maximum will be 3 signs, 10% of each wall. And there are existing freestanding signs, both located on Highway 50 and on I-64, and they would be allowed to use those with the property owners as well for their signage. Staff has done a preliminary review with city departments, and we make the following recommendations. The storage lot shall be enclosed with a 6-foot vinyl fence. The hours of operation, if approved, are to remain 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. This would not be a 24-hour access location. They would be required to install a security system that encompasses the entire property. Additionally, installation of a license plate reader for additional security measures would be required. The photometric plans are to meet city code. They would be using the existing lighting, which does meet code as it exists today. Landscape plans are to meet city code, and the O'Fallon's commercial design guidelines must be met. The biggest issue that I want to point out with the commercial design guidelines is that the petitioner in their first revision, or their first submittal, did look to add all metal-sided buildings. We are working through them, and they have complied, so they will be meeting the commercial design guidelines and updating those so they are not all metal siding.
So there'll be EFS?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Taking a look at the proposed alternative parking plan, they have submitted data from the Institute of Transportation Engineers showing a peak parking demand with a study conducted on an existing facility that had 375 storage units with the same hours of operation that are being proposed from 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. When in that study, they saw a peak parking demand of 3 visitors every 2 hours for a total of 183 visitors per week. ITE adjustment suggests that there is a recommendation of 1.26 parking spaces per 100 storage units. So the variance that they are requesting is 1 parking space per 70 units, which would mean 6 parking spaces, including 1 ADA parking space. Taking a look at our required parking per city code, office space does require 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. For 150 square feet, they would be required to have 1 parking space for employees. For storage units, we require per code 1 space per 5 units. With 350 units, they would be required to provide 70 parking spaces for a total of 71 spaces. The requested alternative parking plan using ITE data states that office space would be required at 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. They are meeting the city code by providing 1 space per employee and 1 space per 70 units. For 5 units, totaling 350 units, they would be required to have 5 parking spaces with every 70 units. This is a total of 6 parking spaces. I would also like to note, just going back to the site plan, on the additions to both the west and the east, there will be doors, and both doors and garage doors where cars will also have access to park on the sides of the east and the western sides of the building. So there would be 6 parking spaces located at the entrance to the building, and parking would also be accommodated on the sides of the building as well. And this was also reviewed with the fire department, and it would allow for fire apparatus to move through the site if need be. Looking at conformity with the 2040 master plan, this does promote the redevelopment of lands with existing infrastructure and public surfaces and the maintenance and rehabilitation of existing residential, commercial, and industrial structures. The reuse of the building begins the redevelopment process of the St. Clair Auto Mall, which, if this is proposed, there would still be 4 vacant sites. This development would utilize one of the vacant buildings. This development also infills an underdeveloped property in O'Fallon with access to infrastructure and public services. In terms of conformity with the zoning ordinance, the proposed use meets all bulk regulations for the respective zoning district of B1 community business, and the proposed use will not have a significant impact on traffic, nor will it negatively affect adjacent properties. Staff does recommend approval of the project with the following conditions: allowance of an alternative parking plan based on the IT findings requiring 1 space per 70 units with a comprehensive demand of 6 spaces. Storage lot would be enclosed with a 6-foot vinyl fence. Hours of operation are to remain 6 o'clock a.m. to 10 o'clock p.m., not a 24-hour access location. They would be required to install a security system encompassing the entire property and a license plate reader for additional security measures. Photometric plan is to meet city code. The landscaping plan is to meet city code, and the City of O'Fallon's commercial design guidelines must also be met. One thing that I did not cover is that this property would also be secured by a gate that would only provide access to people who are renting storage units. They would have an access code, which they would be required to put in to get access through the site, even during hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock p.m.
Okay, question from committee.
Can you clarify, so the fence is around like the perimeter of the whole parcel of land? Is that where the fence is going to be?
The fence would be required surrounding the entire property line.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I might have missed this. This is all like climate controlled?
So looking at the site plan, the existing building in the center of the site plan, that would be climate controlled. The additions on the east and the west would not be climate controlled. When we did speak to the petitioner, he indicated that the climate controlled storage is more for valuables such as furniture, anything of worth of value. And the type of equipment that would be stored in the garage type areas would be in the east and the western side.
Just a quick question. They will have drive-up access to each of the units?
Only
on the east and west sides?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, if you're using the climate controlled, which is located in the center of the building, you would be required to park in one of the parking spaces at the front of the building.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from committee? Questions from council? Yes, Roy.
How many of these properties are rented out there in the old auto mall?
Right now, we currently have 5 vacant spots. We have 5 that are currently rented.
5 rented?
5 that are,
You rented these in what? How long have they, within the last 2 years? 2 to 3 years?
Goodwill, when did?
That is right there.
So they've all been within the last 2 years, been filled in. Ridgeline Motorsports and Goodwill were the first 2. Goodwill's that recently opened up.
Okay. The businesses we have going in there right now are things that I think the city really needs, brings it in. I don't see how this fits in to that area out there. It's not something I think we really need out there.
Sure.
And I don't think we're having trouble renting now that we've got people moving in.
Yes, thank you.
Prospects of people purchasing or renting these places, I think has gone up. I just really not in favor of something like that in that area.
Okay.
Are
Other co-
are the 2 lots that on either side of this, those are not spoken for yet?
They are not.
Okay.
Okay.
And I would assume the person that is wanting to put this in here has done the analysis determining that there's a need for this sort of service.
At the Planning Commission meeting, he did indicate that there is, a study has been done indicating that there is a need for this. He does own an additional storage facility in Mascoutah, which has high usage, which he says is mostly from airmen and Scott Air Force Base.
Okay. Yes, Jessica.
Question and comment. When there are hours of operations tied to something like this, if we fast forward 15 years and ownership changes hands, is this something that's like on the deed to the property? Or, I mean, if this sells in 15 years, can somebody else come in and make it 24/7 access? How does that work?
So if this were to move on to a new property owner, when they would go through the approval process with staff, they would be required to contact the city to see what the appropriate zoning classification would be. We would see that there would be either, if it does move forward, an approved planned use on the property, and all the stipulations would be they would be required to follow the stipulations. If they wanted to vary from them, they would be required to come back through city council for approval.
And then just a comment, I certainly understand Roy's concern, but a lot of those properties have been vacant for long enough that I think if there was a huge demand for this property that's sort of, I mean, highway access, but not close access. It's near a water sewer treatment facility, so I think something like this where people will come, do what they need to do and leave, it seems to have appropriate safety measures built in, I'm fine with it.
Yes, Jerry.
I have one question. I may have missed this because I don't hear something. Is all the storage going to be inside, nothing outside?
All storage would be indoors. There would be no storage of any vehicles, boats, RVs.
Okay. A question on the LPR. Is that going to be tied into the city's systems?
It would not be tied into the system, but if access was needed by the police department, they would be able to reach out to the property owner or property management and get information.
Okay, good.
And by LPR, you're meaning the license plate reader?
Yeah.
Okay, just so we're all on the same page here.
All right. Any other questions from council? Questions from public?
Vern Moyer, Ward 3. This come up through community development, am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir. This is the first meeting for this.
Okay. Well, if you want my opinion, I know it's not worth much. But I think this is a poor example to bring into a felon. Not only that, I think you guys can do a lot better. And I think you're just opening the floodgates up to let other storage come along 64 there. I mean, we got enough car dealerships along there. When people drive through, that's all they see. We don't see anything else. And then the existing, I don't know what you can do about it. You need to try maybe another avenue. Hopefully not any more car washes, but I know there's tons of those around here. But I don't know, maybe a little bit better community development with people. I don't know. I think you really missed the mark on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from public? Hearing none?
Just for clarity,
Yes.
are there any other climate-controlled storage facilities that you're aware of in the city?
Yes.
Indoor ones?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's actually one just on the north side of Interstate 64,
Oh, I didn't know they had.
right on Frontage Road.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Can't hear what you're talking up there because you ain't got your microphones on.
I had it on.
Okay,
Please proceed.
so any other questions or comments? Okay.
I asked if there were other indoor climate-controlled facilities in town, and they said yes, across 64. I don't know if the speakers are not projecting out that way. And he said yes, across the highway.
Yep. Okay. So we need a motion?
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Stoffel,
Yes.
Roach,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vorse.
Yes.
Parchment.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. That concludes the agenda items we had. We're going to open this now for public comments for the committee. The general rules apply. Please come up, use the microphone, identify yourself, where you live in town, and then please keep your comments to about 5 minutes. We'll try to get through as much of the comments. I know we've got a group here that was here 2 weeks ago, and we deferred that until this committee. We have our experts on community development here to answer questions as we go along. We'll try not to make this a give and take kind of thing, but kind of collect up the comments, and then when we get 5 or 6, and we'll have our staff member address those issues, and then go on if we need to do that. So the microphone is open to those of you with comments or questions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before we enter public comments, just one note that we have scheduled a meeting with all the affected property owners, which I'm sure will be brought up tonight on Deer Creek. Mr. Chad Truin has reached out to him individually, invited him to a meeting to meet with a state government official who is the liaison with the floodplain. Help me out on this, Chad. Their title?
The National Flood Insurance Program.
There you go.
Okay.
And that will be held Wednesday with those homeowners and the
Okay,
coordinator.
Wednesday this week.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, please.
Karen Pfeiffer, I'm at Deer Creek, 801 Deer Creek, and I'm in Ward 2. One of the things we want to talk about is we were at the Public Works meeting last time, and we're told to come to this committee. After the meeting, we were told that we would be reached out to before this meeting to have something arranged. We did get a notice that there was a meeting on Wednesday. However, we're wondering why we weren't put on the agenda this evening, because everyone told us that we need to talk to you about this. And the fact that we've been blindsided by a letter from the city about flood insurance from someone who is running now the floodplain. We had no idea any of this existed. It came to us after a very, very big storm that none of us flooded this time. We had hail damage. So now we're being told some things about insurance and how it can impact our property to the point that we may have to raise our homes out of the floodplain. Now, I want you all to visualize our homes that sit along the road here all have walkout basements. Exactly how do you raise a home out of the floodplain? What you need to start thinking about in this city is how your subdivisions that you all okay so readily and so easily talk about already existing farm ponds holding that water and how it impacts people downstream. Because that is what has happened to us over the last 30 years. When we moved here, we were not in the floodplain. Our homes were not in the floodplain. We didn't have to have flood insurance. Many, many years later, with the impact of north and west development, our homes are now impacted, and now you're bringing in all these other agencies to, I don't know what your agenda is. It's not helping us, it's compounding us. And we're not liking it. And I hope the rest of my neighbors will stand up and give you other criteria here that you can think about. I really, really want you to think about what you're doing. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
My name is Rod Thompson. I've resided at 753 Deer Creek Road in O'Fallon with my wife, Deborah Thompson, since we moved here in 1996. And by the way, I found earlier this meeting that my problem is solved. All I have to do is become famous and file my home as a historical landmark, and my problem's solved. Oh, that was supposed to be funny. When we purchased our home, Debbie had a surveyor come out. Our lowest level in our home was a full 6 feet above the floodplain level at that time. The creek behind our home, you could walk across and not get your feet wet. After heavy rain, this was no noticeable impact on the height of the water or the velocity of the water. Since we purchased our home, we have lost between 20 and 40 feet of our backyard due to development upstream and the city management of the creek. Even when a stretch of the creek upstream was straightened out, which made the situation so much worse. I've seen it where there is sunshine where I live, and there is a wall of water flowing in fast from upstream. It goes that fast. After the hailstorm on March 14th, I received a letter from the city of O'Fallon dated April 9th, 2025, signed by Chad Truren, a building official employed by the city, notifying us that inspectors would be in our area conducting assessments for substantial damage determinations. The letter defines substantial damage assessments as inspections required for any structures in the floodplain that have sustained damage from any source in parens, wind, hail, fire, flood, etc., in paren. The inspection determines if a structure is more than 50% damaged, which is substantially damaged. If a structure is found to be substantially damaged, the structure may not be repaired until it meets current flood protection requirements. It is imperative that the community permit office is contacted prior to taking any actions to repair damage related to the flood. Please note the phrase, "to repair damage related to the flood." According to the City of O'Fallon letter, graffiti on our garage door would be considered flood damage. This graffiti damage has happened in O'Fallon, and it makes no sense why this would be flood damage. I complied with the requirements of this letter by forwarding the estimate by an insurance inspector for hail damage to our roof and our siding. I do not understand how hail damage to my roof and the siding can be related to the flood, as stated in the City of O'Fallon letter.
I looked online and printed out the State of Illinois Flood Damage Assessment Packet dated December 2021. This document defines substantial damage as whenever a building located in a mapped floodplain is damaged from any source, in parens, flood, fire, wind, or man-made, in parent. The community must determine if that structure is substantially damaged. Substantial damage is when the cost of repairs are 50% of the structure's pre-damage market value. Note that this list in the state document does not say et cetera, and is only the following: flood, fire, wind, or man-made. The mention of hail is not included in this list. As stated previously, the City of O'Fallon letter had wind, hail, fire, flood, etc., which is not in agreement with the state document. The document states clearly, cost of flood damage repairs. How is hail that hits a roof or siding associated with flood damage? I called the FEMA, which is Federal Emergency Management Agency office, in late April. I asked how hail damage could be interpreted as being flood damage. I was referred to the National Flood Insurance Program Flood Insurance Manual, dated April 2024, which is available online. The FEMA representative told me that substantial damage is located in the manual 10 times, and these references include this statement or similar wording: at the time of the flood. There is no mention of at the time of the hailstorm when the page includes the phrase substantial damage. There's only one mention of hail in the flood insurance manual. On Appendix A, policy, page A-73, section 5, exclusions, part D. We, meaning FEMA, do not insure for direct physical loss caused directly or indirectly by 1, the pressure or weight of ice; 2, freezing or thawing; 3, rain, snow, sleet, hail, or water spray. And it continues on with other exclusions. I would ask the city to review the FEMA Flood Insurance Manual and other manuals and the State of Illinois Flood Damage Assessment Packet. A reasonable person would not come to the conclusion that hail damage should be included in the city's instructions regarding substantial damage determinations due to the flood. The city should rescind their letter dated April 29th, 2025, and focus on damage related to flooding, as FEMA and the State of Illinois FEMA offices have done. And for those of us who did comply with this letter, expunge the record from all submissions by residents who complied with the original City of O'Fallon letter dated April 9, 2025, or earlier assessments of hail damage or any other damage that does not relate to a flood. Thank you.
Are there other comments?
Dave Pfeiffer, again, 801 Deer Creek Road, Ward 2. And I want to make a comment about the letter of substantial damage determination, the fact that this is a floodplain issue driven by stormwater. And stormwater is clearly a public works project. So here we have people, entities, pointing the finger back and forth about who's responsible. The first things I asked about when Mr. Truen showed up at my doorstep was, what are we doing about the stormwater? Well, that's a public works project. So again, we're pointing our fingers back and forth. That letter showed up, I pretty much paid attention to it, and then Mr. Truen showed up at my doorstep and explained to me also that any damages collectively over 50% will result in our homes having to be raised above the floodplain. Again, Mr. Anderson, is that possible? Is that something the city has even looked at? How do we do that? Can we raise these, we're talking 3-story homes. Is it possible even to raise buildings out of the floodplain. Is that a possibility? Have we looked at that? Well, okay, so you're going to answer that yet tonight? And the second thing is who's paying for it? Because it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to raise a home like that, if it even possible. So we're talking millions of dollars of damages to these homes. And I explained that to Mr. Truen, is that you would destroy our home. He said, no, 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 it wouldn't. It would actually increase the value of your home after that happened. Really? Is it because you're out of the floodplain now? That kind of ridiculous logic is what's going on here. The stupidity of this is incredible. And the fact that a substantial O'Fallon program that literally now leads to the destruction of 15 homes when we all increase we all get to the damage that comes up to the 50% mark and destroys 15 homes, that we find that out on our doorstep from some random city engineer, not an engineer, some random city employee. It was very appalling to have that happen. It should never happen. The fact that this wasn't on the agenda night is also appalling. It was discussed at a Public Works meeting. The meeting is tomorrow, it's Wednesday night. It should have been addressed here as an agenda item, letting everybody know that this meeting is going on. When we got our properties, we were all out of the floodplain. All of us. 6 feet here, I was 7 feet out. That's how much water has increased due to the development upstream. You wonder why I'm concerned about runoff and using old detention basins? Because that's what you did for the developments upstream. Is you didn't follow stormwater practices. You did not make sure that subdivisions did not increase the runoff. If you looked at a floodplain map, if you see this one here, this looks like Lake Carlisle with a dam in front of it. The base flood elevation at Seven Creeks, that's the bridge at Seven Hills, drops 7 feet. You have just dammed this property up into ours. We are the detention basin for almost half the city of O'Fallon. Every rain solves a little bit of your stormwater problem because it steals more of our property. If you've seen the pictures that were on Facebook of the trees that came down, 30 feet more of creek bank, that's happened twice in here. And then the debris that was down on the end of the bridge, it's incredible. And that's all coming from Smiley down to our property. You are just stripping our property in our creek. You're destroying our property, and now you're trying to destroy our homes. The consideration here needs to be, how are you going to get us back out of the floodplain and below those elevations? That's what needs to happen here. And that's the policy that needs to happen between Public Works and Community Development. Thank you.
Are there others with comments that they'd like to make?
Hello. Hi, my name is Mary Coleman, and I live at 849 Deer Creek Road, and I'm the house right next to the little bridge. And I'm the one who gets all the runoff, so I've been flooded 4 times in the last 20 years. When I first moved there in 1990, there was no issue with flooding, and like the gentleman said, the creek, you could pretty much walk across it. It was just that dry. And there's a big sewer pipe that runs out of the back of my backyard and goes across to the property on the other side of the little creek, Deer Creek there. And I was told last spring, in the spring of 2024, some guys was in my backyard and they were discussing it. I walked out there to see what they were talking about. They said they thought a lot of the issue that was causing backup and having water come into my backyard was due to all of the runoff that comes down and the trees and the branches and everything, and it stops right there across the sewer line. And then there is a concrete structure that's around the pipe or the sewer line. That pipe, that concrete structure was not always there. It wasn't there in 1990 when I moved there. And when they put that in there, I guess to slow down the runoff to help the farm country, when they put that in there some years ago, and I don't even know when it went in, that's when I started having issues, because I don't know if anybody else's basement has been flooded, but mine has. And I've already got a lot of damage, or had a lot of damage in the last 20 years. So the letter that we received says if you have greater than 50% substantial damage, then you have to elevate your house. I don't know how to do that. And I don't know what that costs, and I don't know how it can even be done, if it can be done, and who enforces it. I'd like to have some answers to this, and I need some help where I live, because I'm the one that gets all the runoff. Thank you.
I'd like to add just briefly, this is Rod Thompson, I live at 753 Deer Creek Road. I'd just like to add one thing. You're talking 13 homes today. Well, 15, thereabouts. I think within my lifetime, and I hope to live a long time, the erosion is going to be so bad in our behind the creek area that the wall of land holding up the cities on the hill is going to erode so much that their houses will topple in. So it'll be more than just our little homes. It'll be those millionaire homes up on the hill. And then you'll really probably have some citizens down here getting concerned because their homes will be affected by flood, even though they're located at an elevation that is amazingly high compared to ours. So mark my words, it's going to happen. I had somebody that I know walked back there. He seems to be an expert in this area, and he said it's going to be a problem for the houses on the hill.
Thank you, Rod. Okay.
Dave Pfeiffer again. I'd just like to back up what Mrs. Coleman said. When she flooded, the water was 160 feet across from her house to the other edge of the creek. 160, that was just me walking it off. At least 160 feet across. That's a lot of water. You look around at the detention basins that are in the area, you look at those during any rain event, flood event, and it's like there's nothing going in them. There's no stress on them. They don't overflow. The one down in downtown area, it's empty. The one in the Presidential Streets is empty. And we are the stormwater detention. You have just stripped us. We are the drainage ditch for O'Fallon.
Okay.
Vern Moore, Ward 3, I love it. What more can they say? I empathize with him like I did before talking to you, and I don't know who this guy is that wrote it out. Whoever wrote the letter out, it'll be sitting up there with you so they can have somebody to talk to about it. And here's the other thing. You didn't mention what time this thing's going to happen on Wednesday. You know, maybe other people who are listening might want to come to this to find out what's going on in this town. You know, how much I'm going to say, you know, how many years the Presidential Streets waited for things to get done over there, and they're still not done right. Within my block area, as I said to you before, they have 3 retention ponds, and they don't retain nothing when it's raining. And nobody wants to drive by and take a look. I mean, my aldermen don't want to come by and look at them because they know there's no water in them, because I can look at them any day of the week and know there's not water in when it's raining, okay? So I feel sorry for them. I mentioned it before, but it took them 56 years to fix the Presidential Streets, and they're not fixed right because the retention or whatever the draining over there is not draining right. It all comes down my front yard all the time. What time is the meeting, by the way, before I walk away? Thank you.
I will let it get noted that I do drive by the Presidential Streets, and everything seems to be draining as.
Yeah, there's no water in them.
Okay, we're getting a little out of public comments here. If we can wrap it up.
A little far afield here.
If we could close public comments and we can answer them.
Yeah.
Mr. Malaire, please have a seat and do not yell across the council. You are not invited. It is for the residents of Deer Creek to meet. The 15 members.
I don't care where you come from.
Mr. Malaire, please have a seat.
No, you can't tell me that I
Mr.
can't
Malaire,
come in
please
here on
have a
Wednesday.
seat.
Invite Mr. Malaire personally.
Please do so.
I will, absolutely.
You can have it.
5:30. Hold on.
Please have a seat.
really-
We have a meeting conduct.
5:30. Appreciate the thought. I will be here Wednesday at 5:30.
So as mentioned, on Wednesday, the liaison through the state program has been invited to speak to the residents along Deer Creek to discuss the questions had tonight.
Thank you. So, do we have any other business to?
Yeah, I'd like to make a few comments.
Okay.
This was not advertised as a public meeting because we are specifically inviting residents along Deer Creek and the council members and the mayor who represent them. It is not a public meeting, so there will not be a quorum of elected officials. To address the email that went out, this is a national program, the NFIP, and the directive was sent out from the state of Illinois floodplain coordinator, Aaron Conley, that specifically outlined any damage, including wind or hail, counts as damage when the city must go out and do an inspection. We took directive from the state, we contacted the state, and she verified last week that we did what we were supposed to do as participants of the NFIP. Because we did that and there were comments from residents at the last Public Works Committee meeting, we set up a meeting so we could specifically address your feedback and your concerns directly with them, with the state and the coordinator one-on-one, as she is the direct liaison for the National Flood Insurance Program and FEMA. So that is why you were invited. It is not a public meeting. It is not being advertised. There will not be a quorum. We specifically invited residents on Deer Creek. The floodplain map is specifically adopted by FEMA. The city does not have any control over what properties are included or taken out by a letter of approval. So all of these questions, I invite you to please show up to the meeting as we take directives strictly from the state coordinator and FEMA, and she will be able to answer your questions.
I just have one more question. Karen Pfeiffer, Deer Creek Road. Are we the only floodplain in the city of O'Fallon?
You are the only residential dwellings located in a floodplain, and that's why, no.
So we are the only floodplain?
Correct. As indicated on the FEMA map that is currently adopted, you are the residential dwellings in a floodplain.
So the lady across the road on her farmland, while it's not impacting her residence, she's not invited? Where you just repaired?
That is not in our jurisdiction. It's not in the city of O'Fallon.
Okay.
FEMA
And
put the
Mr.
floodplain.
Millar, who is in flooded area because the streets flood, that doesn't count. So only because we're along a creek.
It's because you were in a floodplain.
And the residents behind us who are essentially, their house is not in there, but they're in the erosion zone, that doesn't count.
It's because you were in a floodplain. They are not.
Because
their house is not in a floodplain.
Their house is not, but
Their
part of their
property is not.
property is.
These are questions you can ask Wednesday night. I don't
Thank
have
you.
the answers because this is not our program.
I've got one more, because you brought it up. The jurisdiction across
Mr.
the
Campbell,
street, Dave
please
Pfeiffer.
close.
And the city of O'Fallon put up the riprap and the steel beams that protects the property over there. True? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the silence.
Okay, we're going to close the public comment section. I think we're beating a dead horse here. So let's, is there a motion?
So move.
Second. Okay, so we are adjourned for this evening. Thank you.